Peace, peace. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's Real Talk with ZSJ. Um, Welcome, and I'm excited to be here again with y'all tonight. You're just coming in, make sure you like, share the video. This is a conversation that is really important to me, and I believe this month is what is it, Minority Mental Health Month or something like that. I've been seeing people talk about that, but anyway, I want to welcome Brother Okra. Oh Lord, I'm messing up your name again. Say it for me.
Oka, so Oka Asusa Ma'akwa.
That's right, Okra Susa.
Oka Asusa Ma'akwa. There you go. Blessings.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's beautiful. Welcome, brother. Welcome. Introduce yourself to the family and share a little bit more about yourself.
Okay, so for introduction, I said my name, but my name means through true guidance, ancient wisdom is the protector of my life force. And I feel that's a real setup to kind of think about when you're on these platforms, you know, what are you going to disseminate or convey to the audience that is, nested in wisdom, wisdom of our ancestors, the wisdom of the people before us, and not just kind of like everybody has their opinions and something to say all the time, but I really want to leave people listening with some notions of kind of like more kind of like wise ways where we can do things, which is not kind of repetitive of what everybody says in terms of opinion. So I'm a career I'm a systemic family and couple psychotherapist from an African centered point of view. I need to make that clear, because though I've been traditionally trained and conventionally trained in European Eurocentric sort of ways of doing this, to be certified or qualified, as they say, I'm very much anchored to the wisdom and the teachings of my ancestors in a way that I practice or perform what I'm doing. So I'm really clear. I've been doing that for over 20 years now, which is quite a long time. So I'm kind of really experienced with this. And I work with families, and I work with couples, marriage, and I work with individuals as well. Um, and I work with them across in terms of, there's lots of modalities or interventions that I do in terms of, trauma and specific sort of things in terms of areas that I work in, quite a few specialisms. So, but this conversation is about, some sort of worrying sort of trend that is building that I've noticed, and we're trained to notice patterns and patterns of young people that I've been with, specifically young men that I'm working with, who step into my space and talk about their relationship kind of, journeys and woes and stuff like that. And ideas that are being embedded in that generation about how they perceive themselves and how they need to relate and interact with the opposite sex, which is been concerning. Concerning enough for me to sort of, talk about the post that you're going to read out right now.
Yeah, man. Listen, it's very concerning because, like, I see it. Let me just read the post for context for everybody, because when I saw it, I was like, wow, because I haven't really seen, and it makes sense now that I know that professionally this is what you do, right? Like this is your work, and your calling for our community. So, for the audience, I'm going to read the brother's Facebook post that prompted this conversation tonight. Uh, so you said there is a long-term crisis brewing for interpersonal relationships between Black men and women amongst this younger generation. You said, I was moving with the thinking that most of this combative, negative, dichotomous dialogue was just social media chatter and not reflective of real life spaces. I did the same thing. Um, and then you go on to say, but I'm seeing more than enough young men in my clinical space who are embedding the beliefs of these snake oil salesmen like Kevin Samuels, Jordan Peterson, I've never heard of him, and these quote alpha male commentators on YouTube and so on, for it to be deeply concerning. And then you said there are Black women commentators who are doing the work of division on the other side too. Older, bitter Black women who, under the guise of talking my truth, are dispensing toxic narratives dressed up as sound advice. The Don't Trust No Negress choir and its cacophony on here are unhealed vessels with the loudest voices on this platform. Finally, you say, let me give you some advice. If any of these voices are just offering scathing, acerbic criticism with no path or solutions to complementary engagement with one another, then stay the frack away from their ramblings because hurt people will do most hurt to others. That really struck me. And then when you said the younger generation, because I'm seeing that as well. And when I'm talking about younger, I'm talking about like my kids' age. And what it made me immediately reflect on, um, my son who is turning 14 next month, early next month, it made me reflect on a situation that
14.
14,
Okay.
14. It made me reflect on a situation that happened, I want to say maybe when he was 12. Um, and he was friends with a young lady that, her mother and I worked. So I travel. I'm a professional activist, I guess you can say. And so I knew her mother. In fact, they were from Baltimore. But I knew her mother through the work that I do. And so they met like at a conference because we would bring our kids because the work that I do is around the school to prison pipeline, education justice. So
I
we always
remember.
travel with our children and everything. And so her daughter, this young lady took a liking to my son, but he, in his mind, they were just friends. And I had to go back and read the text messages. I had listened to like her voice notes and stuff like that. And Amir, my son, was clear. Like, he didn't like her like that as a girlfriend and all of that. When I tell you this young lady, she had to be 12, 11. She unleashed some of the most horrible things that I've ever heard a black woman create for a black man. We talking about 12-year-olds. And I was just, first of all, I was shocked that she had that language. And then I thought, so obviously I had to talk with my son about, what's acceptable, what he, like just I had to have a whole talk with him and all of that and about healthy interactions with his peers and things like that. I ain't on all the girlfriend and boyfriend stuff yet. We talked about that too, but just safe and healthy interactions with your peers and what's abuse and what you don't have to put up with and when you need to let mommy know and all of that. But it made me reflect on some of the things that I see on social media. And I was like, if this young girl has access to social media, likely she's getting some of that language there, but she's also probably getting some of that language from the women in her life, right? Or like, because she's 12. Like, how would you know to call? I mean, I can't even want to repeat some of the stuff this child said to my baby, So when I read that, I was just like, this is getting out of control. And so when you said you're seeing it now in your practice, and I don't listen to Kevin Samuels. I mean, I was forced to by people sharing clips like on social media. Like I've heard like 3 or 4 minute clips and how he degrade people and everything is about money and wealth and whatever. But I would love to just hear your reflections on that and sort of what are some of the remedies that you see that some of us lay people, right, can begin to implement to push back on it?
So this notion of alpha male is really interesting because Kevin Samuels to me is the antithesis of a alpha male, but a lot of men think that he represents what an alpha male sort of is, and that's his presentation and everything. Just like this dude, I mean, anyway. So, it would be easier to kind of like just slate him or in some sort of try to humiliate him and humiliate other people, but for me, from a clinical point of view, when you listen to St. Kenyon Samuels, this is somebody that is, you know, um, understands the market that he's playing to, the audience that he's playing to, and seeing this this actually generates revenue or income for him, and that's what it's totally about. Um, and not even to know if he fully believes everything that he's saying, which is kind of irrelevant to be honest. But it's clear that this generates the most attention for him in terms of what he's about. And we live in a success culture in the West specifically, and a success culture is primarily derived or motivated by money. The more material assets you have, or the more material sort of gains you make, the more it kind of to everybody else you're successful. Get the bag culture, this kind of stuff. And for that reason, um, in a capitalist society, this is basic knowledge for everybody. It absolutely sets up competition, and this is what you're having nowadays in relation to people getting together. So it's like nobody's talking about, you know, um, what can I do for you? Everybody talking about what can I get from you. And there's a nice couple that I see on utilize social media. The Devalis, Deval, I can't remember his surname, but he has a wife and they got three sons. And they had a podcast the other day, and I big them up at the time because he's an Aries like me, but anyway, all that kind of stuff. And his wife, and they have this wonderful interaction and engagement with each other. But they had a podcast the other day, and the whole podcast is about how they are in service to their partner. How can I serve you? The whole context of what they were talking about is how can I show up daily to serve you, to give you. If you talk that sort of language to these young people, they'll look at you like you're crazy, because they see it as a loss. They see no gain in being of service to somebody else. They're going to lose something. And then that's what they call men and being a simp and these kind of things. And it's really interesting because a lot of the things they talk about being simps or being, being taken advantage of, or not anybody letting anybody treat you like that.
It's
It's
hyper
really
individualistic, very
right,
hyper
right.
individualistic. Yeah.
But it's also stuff they dismiss in the realms of just being a kind person, a compassionate person, or a gentle person, and these things are considered simp culture, which is just so bizarre for me. And let me tell you how this works for me. I grew up in a culture, inner city culture, that's kind of thing. And I remember a time when we with my friends, and if a fight broke out and somebody comes along and bash somebody in the head with a baseball bat, the head splits open, we'd laugh because our mindset was so dysfunctional that we think this is funny. Like this is, something to laugh at. And you know how many years I had to rewire my brain or rewire the way of thinking to actually think this is horrifying. This is not something to laugh at, right? But you got these people that are looking at normal, healthy behavior as simp culture, as something that taking advantage of, and some just being kind to somebody else, somebody that you're dating. I was in this post the other day. A lot of these, and this is all connected. This is a father's group, and one of the fathers was talking about going to pick up his son, but the boy's older brother, who's not his son, was standing with him at the school. And you want to see a amount of comments that were saying, "Leave that son, leave the brother there. He's nothing to do with you." And I was just like, "What? What is happening to us? What is this notion of just why would you leave the son, his older brother, on the street?" So people are trying to bring these other contexts in terms of, oh, well, that could be kidnapping, and what if you had some kind of negative relationship with the boy's other father, and his father don't like you? I'm like, there's a lot of steps you could do before you could, facilitate that in terms of speaking to the mum, say, his brother's standing there, should I pick him up as well? And everybody's talking about selfish culture, about no, he's having his time with his own son. These are all grown men. And I want to talk about how Eurocentric culture has poisoned us to such a degree that this notion of just reaching out and helping somebody else is considered such a violation. And this is where these young people are. So one of the young people that was in my sessions, and I'm not talking this business like that, I'm going to say hypothetically, right, talked about he couldn't be with somebody that earns more money than him in this modern context. And he said that she earns no more than money. And he's a middle class, professional, but he said he couldn't do that. He couldn't be with somebody that earns more money than him. And I was like, why is that? He said, nah, because when women, earn more money than you, they kind of assert their position and try to, make you look silly because I'm a man and I'm supposed to be a fighter. I said, listen, we're 2021. We're not hunting in the jungle now, brother. You know what I'm saying? You're not trying to, you don't need to go out there and get the meat and bring it back to the family, that kind of, because this is 2021. These roles that we are ascribing to do not fit modern context sometimes. So if you're running a family home and you have a complementary relationship, it's a partnership. Now these roles just come down to who's better suited for these tasks. But this goes amiss for these people. So people are trying to step up into certain tasks where you don't have the capability for that. Talking about you being a leader or you need to be the man in the house, but you've not been in no leadership roles. There's nothing in your socialization or where you've been brought up that has trained you for leadership. But you think it should be asserted or given to you just because you're a man. This is crazy thinking in 2021. So you can't join with somebody else. So this somebody else has got their shit together. Excuse my language. But now you want to lead them just because you're a man. Hey, have a seat, bro. Like literally, that's how I'm trying to tell you. Have a seat. This is not, So basically, you can't date this sister that you join with, have a good connection, blah blah blah. But then she tells you her salary, and all of a sudden you start cringing in the corner because she earns triple what you make. That's not what she's approaching you for. So what's the value in what you see somebody else? And with the value is measured in terms of what's for financial, considerations, then we're always going to be in some kind of problems because women earn a lot more than men nowadays. So that shouldn't be a consideration in terms of what that sums you up in terms of I'm valuable. And I think that's one of what a lot is what's one of the messages given to men nowadays in terms of, them form an identity for themselves. It's about this value is nestled or cocooned in or, all wrapped up in how much money I'm worth or what I make. And if I don't
Well, that's
have this,
perpetuated through the people that you name, like through at least from what I can see, right? Like I said, I do not watch Kevin Samuels for obvious reasons, I guess. And I don't watch, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't follow or watch people who have made a large platform for themselves and making good money off of their platform, degrading one
absolutely,
part of our community. There's a lot
absolutely.
of black women that we can certainly name who
Oh,
do the same thing, maybe not so much on YouTube, but they are in the university, right?
hmm
And they have a platform on social media or Twitter, and Twitter is horrible. I don't know if you're on there, but
mm,
it's really
absolutely.
a cesspool of dysfunction and anti-blackness.
And it can be
From
real vicious. I've seen it. I've
extremely
seen it.
vicious,
Yeah, go
extreme,
ahead.
and so one of the things I thought was ironic, and this was, I want to say, right before the Trump administration or
hmm
at the very beginning, but there was a time when black men are trash trended on Twitter.
Right. I remember.
That hashtag. Do you
I
remember
remember.
that?
Yeah, yeah. I absolutely remember that. Yeah.
Trended
hmm
on Twitter.
Absolutely
And
remember that.
I was like, how the hell is black men? What I mean, how is this trending?
hmm
Like,
hmm
the history of white women ain't created no hashtag after Trump was elected and he appointed all these people to the Supreme Court and doing all this stuff and grabbing women by the put. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, what is wrong with us, right?
hmm hmm
And then there is, and I also don't like. For me, I don't like take for granted that social media has also become another tool for COINTELPRO. So I'm also thoughtful about that. As
hmm
successful as COINTELPRO was and is, in my opinion, that we should be under no illusions that the government stopped using that
Right.
as a
Absolutely.
tactic.
Absolutely. Because I remember used to seeing these arguments or these kind of dialogues going on, and then you see these profiles popping up. Black men are trash, blah blah blah. Sort of like a lot of this sort of not so healthy, black feminist sort of rhetoric. Um, but there would be no, there'd be like the profile's 25 friends, and it's clearly some sort of Russian bot thing going on. It's not, this is concentrated. This is not an accidental thing kind of going on here. And there'll be so many of them kind of joining these conversations, and their communication is absolutely vicious and acerbic. And I kind of just said to myself, you know what? It doesn't trigger me personally because the healer in me sees some of the frustrations or some of the pain and the hurt that a lot of these women have experienced. But I would say, we all have a responsibility to do the healing work for ourselves. If I started to talk about my own
That's
experiences
it.
with black women, right, it
We
wouldn't
all,
be
please say that again. That part is good. We all have a responsibility to do the healing work for ourselves. And I really
absolutely.
want us to concentrate on that because we can talk about the social media and sort of the harm, but one of the things that I've also realized, at least from my perspective, is that hurt feelings and the unhealed failed relationships in our community have become politicized.
Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
for me, I want to figure out, right, like how do we not necessarily depoliticize it, but how do we focus on the healing part? How do we
Mhm.
bring it back to the main thing? Because we're not going to survive without each other.
Well, I've been around for a little while. The first one that was doing this nonsense was Tommy Sotomayor. All right, you remember
Yep.
him?
I remember him too.
He was one of the original ones. I don't know where he's gone. He disappeared, but I think he was one of the first ones that we had these loud platforms of just trashing black women. And I always said back then when I had, less kind of like patience, if I ever got myself in a room and told him some such a more, we'd probably be swinging because I despised the man. And in terms of what he used to be saying. But I used to think to myself, like, literally, I was the poster boy for Tommy Sotomayor. If there's somebody that can, turn around and say, yo, this is somebody that, could actually turn out and be like viciously hate black women. Yeah, I had the best experience with my own
Me
intent.
too.
I took right. I mean, my mother was not the best mother for me. Absolutely not. She didn't do right by me in any sense. You get what I'm saying to you? And over the years, I had to do the healing part before I even knew what healing was. To understand that my mother did the best she could with what she had. All right. And if I stayed in that place with her, all that is going to do is just destroy me. All right. If I stayed in that place, but I have, my spiritual tenets that underpin me that knew that I was African centered in all the ways. So black women was the only thing that was ever going to be for me. And it's not to say I haven't had some bad experiences with relationships in the past. I've had some black women that haven't been great for me either. But I've had some fantastic black women. I'm discerning enough to know that those experiences are individual in what they were, and not so representative of what all black women are. All right.
Right.
So, and I think that's where, if I was sitting down with some of these women, because I feel like if I was in a room with some of these angry women, who are expressing these things, this whole sort of frustration, I would sit there and listen. I want to give them a hug, permitting our touches. I don't want to be accused of anything. You get what I'm saying to you? But I want to give them a hug because I feel that's what they need sometimes. They need to be, to do the healing work. And I think that the touch is just kind of like, yeah, I got you. Because what the only thing that triggers me with these conversations and that side, coming from that side, is that my whole thought pattern is how do I join with you? But if I'm hearing such a conversation or such a kind of like, dialogue from you that is like, I want to kill you, then that's not, conducive for me wanting to join with you per se, and black woman is my beginning and end. Let me be clear with that. I've never been so clear in my whole life. Like literally, there's nothing. I've been around the world, and if you want to talk about aesthetics, nothing more beautiful than a black woman. All right. But even in terms of essence, the one who understands me, the one that I don't have to do all this work with, the one that can connect with me on a deeper spiritual level, is absolutely a black woman. And it's never been any different. So, and I feel like, there's no way we're going to win. Absolutely impossible if we're divided in the way that we
Exactly.
are, right?
Exactly.
Because
And
white
I've had
supremacy
similar.
was, go ahead.
Well, no, white
Oh,
supremacy, the divide and conquer has worked so well. And it's like I hear people say, yes, divide and conquer. And then the next minute they're participating in the divide and conquer. It's like, okay, when you know better, you're supposed to do better. To your
right.
point though, and I people often ask me, well, why are you like so against, like black feminism and all of this? It's not that I'm necessarily against it. It's just that the manifestation of how I see black feminism is manifested in popular culture, on
Hmm.
social media, in movies, hell, everything is that it is so anti-black male in so many
Hmm.
ways. And
Hmm.
it perpetuates the negative stereotypes that create the the energy that takes their lives, and then everybody's just like, there's no responsibility. Then people are protesting in the streets and all that. Why don't we care about black men before they're dead? That's
Hmm.
my concern.
Right.
You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? I don't want to be protesting in the streets about another black man that's been killed by a police officer, but then just
Hmm.
last week I was saying black men ain't shit on Twitter. That don't make sense to me. And
Hmm.
I'm trying to get us to see the connection. I too have had bad experiences with black men. My first husband, right? Like, my son's father, uh, could have been the poster boy for me to hate all black men.
Hmm. Hmm.
But like you,
I
I
did the
did
work. You
some
did
work.
the
I did some work. And and you mentioned this earlier when we were talking, and I don't want us to get shy away from this too, because I would love to hear your thoughts about it. But it is a spiritual journey. I had
Absolutely.
I've had an experience recently. It's absolutely a spiritual journey, and the experience I had recently helped me connect that more, like full blown, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and you may know, but I people have had like Arisha readings and things like that.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
have
Let's get into
been
it.
let's get
Absolutely.
into it. I have had those readings, and I have been called. It's been calling me really all of my life. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? To learn this, and I've been running away from it too in a lot of
Hmm.
ways. But
Hmm.
I reflect back on that first marriage. Both of us, childhood trauma, massive
Hmm.
childhood trauma,
Absolutely.
unhealed
Hmm.
childhood trauma.
Hmm.
Um, when I think about like Dr. Tommy Curry's work and brother Dr. Hassan, and they talk about bidirectionality when it comes to domestic violence, oh honey, that
Yeah.
was us. I,
Yeah. Yeah.
I could never say that he just beat me, because half the times I was starting the punches. You feel me? I'm,
Yeah.
I'm just
Absolutely.
being real. I'm being real.
Absolutely.
So I know
Absolutely.
that women can be toxic. You looking at one who used to be toxic, and I do a lot of work not to be toxic today. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
You gotta be.
Absolutely.
I'm not ashamed of that anymore. That's how
No.
I know the healing is what frees people. You see
Absolutely.
what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Because I can
Absolutely.
admit, that I was wrong. To this day, I I feel like some of the things that happened between us.
Hmm.
I'm talking about my ex-husband now. Some of the things that happened between us were horrible. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? But I
Hmm.
had to forgive,
Hmm.
and do the best that I can to move on. And I can't like sit and wallow in it.
Hmm.
And I'm also not going to continue to go back and revisit it. You see what I'm
Got you.
saying? Because
Got you.
it's about moving forward and doing better. And I can say now that I am in a very much balanced and partnership
But
marriage with my current husband.
that's the development. I mean, if you don't grow from these, and this is the thing, if you don't grow from your experiences in a way that you reflect, in a way that kind of leads you on a positive path,
Hmm.
then you're gonna be staying stuck in some negativity. And
Hmm.
these conversations that are kind of arise on social media are born out of negativity. One of the things I kind of grabbed from I believe I'm a feminist, funny enough,
Hmm.
because and I feel like most people are, like most healthy people are. And Dr.
Well,
Tommy Curry talks about one second.
but
Dr. Tommy
politically,
Curry says,
feminism is one way. I so
I don't want to use that term. I'm going to correct myself. Watch
Okay,
me.
go
All
ahead.
right.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch myself. Because Dr. Tommy Curry in his book, Mania, talks about how black men overwhelmingly was in support of women, being more outside of the home and all these kind of things. Go ahead. You put yourself on. Yeah,
Yeah,
go
no,
ahead.
no. I said that's right. Yeah, black men are very much progressive when it
Yes.
comes to women's rights and all of that. We
Right.
that's real. But I don't think women's rights necessarily is just feminism, especially black women's rights.
Right. So what I was going to say to you, but the conversation that I have with these current narratives or rhetoric from black feminists always place black men as adversarial, and that's my concern. Because the people that I grew up with who understanding talks about womanism is a better sort of theory from
Africana
African
womanism.
yeah, right.
Lenore
We
Hudson
talk
Wings are,
about,
yeah.
yes, we want these rights and freedom as black women, and we want to assert ourselves in terms of what we're in, but we are never separate ourselves from the notion of black men. And I think a lot of this language that you've seen or rhetoric from black feminists online specifically is conversations that place black men as the enemy. And that is concerning for me in a way, like, having, but when I was going on to just kind of talk about, this healing part, kind of spirituals, the spiritual aspect. So if you don't have something that grounds you, and this is the thing about when people jump into and don't realize a lot of how they're doing things is firmly embedded in Eurocentric culture. All right, because it's my African-centered culture that alerts me to the fact that my, black women are not my enemy. You with me? So with that, that's how I develop. Like, I know that this is my complement. This is who the only person I'm gonna win with. So in my own experiences, in terms of Yeah, I'm just coming out of a divorce, with my own ex-wife, and I had to learn in that relationship this notion about how do I used to think I was calm, like nothing could trigger me. I had this kind of degree of composure or confidence, but actually I realized that I wasn't. But it was only through my spiritual, work that I do in these kind of readings and following the reading that I realized that this is what you need to work on. You're not as calm as you think you are. So in terms of having this energy that's full up in your face and kind of screaming and shouting or whatever, you need to maintain yourself. This is when you can perfect your menip to not be affected by something that's not really in reality a threat to you, right? So these are the things I had to kind of learn, but I always knew that nothing about that experience said that all black women like this, because I could have come out of that marriage with an idea that this is what black women are like, and this is why I need to avoid. But I'll tell you about our relationships have always been cemented in survival, and that's the thing that is troubling for us. This is why we have this combative thing going on, because we're starting from the bottom up, and because black men and women have been fighting for just the little space they have. When they get into a relationship, they don't even know how to turn it off. It's hyper vigilant. Because every minute is like I gotta fight for mine, I gotta get mine, and they get into the relationships and it grows, it kind of carries on from that. So it's like
It's so
any
true.
little piece, you do not let the other person get away with anything because you feel like that's a a infringement of your autonomy or an infringement on your space. And this is why you fight for it. So sometimes something don't it's innocuous. Some things are just not even that important. But because of the way you've been conditioned and socialized, you make it a big thing. And it becomes something else. And then when it comes something else, it's no longer about that little thing that you started with at the beginning. Now it's something else completely. And this is how we do our relationships, like literally. I gotta survive in this. And when you're in that survival mode, you don't even have a space for actualization. So these kind of ideas about how you sit down, we're not conditioned. When some of us are not socialized to have conflict resolution. That's how do you sort something out. Like let's sit down and have a conversation about this. And, it doesn't have to be a big argument or a fight.
Not only conflict resolution, but sometimes people are like avoiding the communication altogether. I've
Right.
experienced that. Like, let's talk. Like,
Stonewalling. We call that
so
stonewalling. Yeah.
stonewalling,
Yeah.
ghosting,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
no, like
Yeah.
refusing to answer direct questions,
Right. Right.
and
Right.
it's confusing.
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
and and this is a person that says they love you, like they have all this passion, when you're together, all of those different things, and then it's just like, there's and then the conflict arises sometimes because there isn't clear communication.
Right. Right. And here's the thing, sometimes people confuse communication. They feel like there's this notion that, women have this greater breadth of emotional vocabulary and stuff like that. Now, let me be clear. It's not actually true. What you have is that women are better at expressing themselves. Doesn't mean to say it's going to be emotional vocabulary. They're better at talking. Right? So if I'm detailing, the event or scenario or whatever, doesn't mean to say I'm having an emotional engagement with this. I'm just telling you what the hell you did when you're supposed to do it and why I didn't like it. But you're not saying the feelings that are attached to it, which is the emotional vocabulary. So this notion that women are better communicators or have better expression, emotional expression, is not actually true in practice. I see it all the time in my clinical space. And also, men are socialized to only have a small window or a small repertoire of emotional expression. All right. So these other aspects of emotional expressions, we're socialized to not be able to do these things. So I'm having a conversation with a brother and a woman. I try to tell him, you know what, crying. I'm not going to tell you to cry every time you're in a situation, but let me tell you what crying is. Crying is just a release of energy. It literally is just a release of energy. It doesn't mean anything. But crying to mal or what you call social language is considered weak. There's something about seeing a man crying that says that you're weak. And all men, regardless of race or culture or class, are conditioned to be strong. They're socialized that you got to be strong. And you're also socialized to fight if your position is threatened. All right. So the women that I know that can fight are inner city women. Absolutely. Because they taught from young, yeah, you got to battle. Because there's no, there's no hostages in those situations. I was always confused because I've kind of seen these middle class black women talking about women like there's some kind of fragile creatures. I'm like, what? Not where I'm from. Are you crazy? Them sisters will kill you. So I was all kind of confused. But they're the only subgroup of women that are taught to fight, like literally know how to fight. Like they will knuckle up with you and
Oh, I
know how to
know.
swing a punch, right? And it's like, so I but if you're not socializing these other, but middle class men are also taught to fight in some kind of way, because that's what men do, conditioned to do, right? So it's some kind of notion when you go out. So you want to be the biggest example of this? A British white example. When they talk about football hooliganism, right? This is Eurocentric culture. This is what we live in.
You
So you got
said British culture when they talk about what now?
football hooliganism, right? So these hooligans, after they play teams, they think it's a big culture in Europe, right? These football fans that literally go out and have these big bust ups, they fight, like try to kill other fans. Half of all of those fans were bankers. They were all investment bankers and all these kind of middle class rich jobs. They weren't just English white trash. You know what I'm saying? They weren't just English working class because they all been taught in some sort of way to knock that dude out if he threatens your space. I'm not so sure that the equivalent to in terms of black middle class or middle class white women have been taught the same thing, that you gotta fight for your position. But you live in the hood. Every sister knows that at some point she gonna have to fight for her own, or have to protect herself, whether it's just her own body or own autonomy or just some other person, right? So when I used to, but it's not. This is what my point I'm trying to make is. It's not that women can't fight. It's which context have you been socialized, taught how to fight, right? So this notion that women cannot do violence is just crazy, because I've seen it. I watched my mother beat up 4 policemen. Don't play in it, like literally bust up 4, because my mother's a big sister. You know what I'm saying? And I watched her clean. Because in England they don't shoot you, right? But before other reinforcements come, she buck up
You grew up
4
in
policemen.
England.
Yeah, born and bred, London, Britain, same thing. So they don't, the guns are not on normal police officers. They have to be in specialized cars that drive around or whatever. But normal police officers that come to your door to arrest you, they just got their truncheons, they got their batons. And I remember being a kid watching them come into my house for my father or something, and they said something to my mother, and she went off, and she was busting heads, proper. I'm like, thing, and I'm like, this. I'm looking at it. No, this is a woman in confinement. So my point, what I'm trying to say to you, all right, when I hear this notion that they talk about, I say that women's greatest weapon is our mouth. If you ever hear black women across the world, nobody cuss out a person like a black woman can. Nobody. Trust me. Whether Jamaica or America or wherever you are, if a black woman gonna read you, she gonna read you good, boy. You have to slink away like anything. You do not want to hear the mouth of a black woman. All right? And sometimes in these contexts, in terms of interpersonal relationships, women know how to get to the heart of a man. You understand what I'm saying to you? Like, what's really gonna, get him riled up. You understand what I'm saying to you? And if this undeveloped, uncultured man, right, primitive man, his only way of responding to what he believes is a threat or something that's kind of trying to humiliate him is to smack it, right? No excuse. He gonna put something down if he feels it's for threat. And this is the situation that you have. But everybody knows their role in this, right? But a woman's tool or power is gonna be like, yo, I'm gonna tell you about last night. You see, last night, that's whack what you did in the film. That's why I want to have sex with your cousin. That's gonna hit a dude hard. So women know how
You
to hit
ain't
dudes
lying,
hard.
man. I know you're not lying. And we be
It's one
wrong for
silly
that.
example. Right? So an uninvolved man is not gonna be like, he's gonna be like, shut it down. If you watch men, inner city men especially, there's not a lot of talking when
Mm-mm.
something's about to pop off.
Mm-mm.
Because look, what are we standing up here chatting for? Let's do it. Right? Why would it be any different from a woman giving them the same energy and they feel threatened? Because they're primitive. They do not know. They have their socialization is so dysfunctional. They don't know any other realm or way of dealing with what they believe is a conflict. And this is what you have in the community in terms of what people believe is so. And what 99% of the conflicts we have in the black inner city community is about respect. Because where the black men, the only thing black men in those communities have autonomy over in terms of, cleaving back some kind of respect is their own space. So you're not going to humiliate this. Every other corner, I can't say nothing. Please roll up on me. I got to be a little boy. I got to be the meekest kind of whatever, no matter how big I am or whatever. But this here, in this little space, you're not going to, this is the only point or the only space that I can take charge. And that's why you see violence go from 0 to 1, because it's like, no, I'm not going to be humiliated. I'm not going to be disrespected. And I wish people just had more of a kind of like intellectual understanding about what violence is in these communities. It's a communication tool. Rather than kind of pointing to some sort of idea that all of these people are, it works in that community. And you got outside people that interact with that community feeling that they can bring their outside modes of behavior, social modes, whatever, and think that they should be switching to their ideas when you're in this turf. No. You're
So the
talking two different
advocacy
languages. Go
piece,
ahead.
yeah. So I feel like that's a question for me, like around like intercommunity violence, domestic violence, which is also intercommunity violence, just between interpersonal, relationships within our communities. From an African-centered perspective, and you're with your clinical hat on, how do you remedy that? And also with your spiritual hat, I really, I think the audience would love to hear that, because I have often argued that a lot of these Eurocentric programs and stuff that people want to fly in, and these white nonprofits get millions of dollars, they're going to fix poor black people and all this shit. They've been doing it for years, and we continue to see the same cycle of violence, right?
Absolutely.
But for me, there seems to be a disconnect with the fact that we don't have our own cultural practices, indigenous cultural
Absolutely.
practices that we're using.
So when I talk about how I use my African centeredness in my practice clinically, so one of my spiritual tenets, the one thing that's been crucial for me in relation to somebody who was a volatile human being when I was young growing up, right? The one piece that's always been centered for me that come from my teachings is peace is my essential nature, right? It's one little mantra. Peace is my essential nature. If I give power to somebody else, that like a little puppet on the string, to lead me in a place where I get angry and frustrated and want to do something, then who's truly in control? This is the conversation I'm giving to brothers when I'm speaking to them in the clinical space. Are you a man of your own control or somebody else controlling you? Because right now, if I turn around and call you some kind of derogatory name and you're going to get mad and want to punch me, that means I could just wind you up. I'm the one that can just control you and make you lose control of yourself just by simple words. Who's in control here? So when you have those conversations, that's when peace is your essential nature. That means that the only energy or your emotion that's going to be healthy for you is being peaceful. All right? That doesn't mean to say you need to scrap your boundaries. But literally, anytime you are now in a place where you feel violence is necessary, because I'm not one of these kind of like, I don't know what you call them, pacifist people or whatever. I did. I'm a peaceful person, but if you gotta go, you gotta go. Like literally, I live in Jamaica, so all right. But essentially, I'm a peaceful person. But I'm like, if violence is necessary, are you doing it out of a place of peace, or are you doing it out of a place of anger? Or a place or other some emotion that's a conditioning for you. So that's my African sentiment when I talk to in people, because I'm kind of thinking like, yo, there's all these other avenues or options for you that you can utilize before you do violence. Why is violence your first port of call? Right? That's not a man that's in control of his own faculties or in control of his own body. That's somebody that's led by something else. These strategies help because it's analysis. And most of the dudes I'm moving do not like the idea of being controlled by somebody else.
That's so good. Yes, they do not like the idea that somebody, but they haven't been socialized to think about it in that way.
Yeah. And you know, and that's what it is, because like literally, if you are so primitive that everything little thing can trigger you,
Mhm.
that means when can you now switch it off? Like literally. So it doesn't matter what context you're in, you can't switch it off. So if
Right,
that's what you want to do, so you're gonna be the same thing. That's why you're doing, you go in jail, come out, you go in, you go come out, and somebody you might buck up on somebody that's gonna finish you. Right?
right,
So when I say this, I say, you know, domestic violence. Let me be clear. In my space, I don't work with anybody where they're still, you know, engaging in DV. There has to be some kind of recognition that this behavior has to stop,
right.
like literally, right before they come in my space. But what I do is just talk from an African standpoint. What's the meaning to the behavior? All right. So in essence, if you're engaging with somebody and feel like this is the way, because most of these dudes, I'm telling you, is disempowerment. For most people, they're trying to gain back some sort of control when they're engaging in this behavior. And that's when we circle it around in that kind of conversation about what is control, what does it mean to them, and what does it mean to just not be in control? Like literally, you know, what cost is it to you to just be like submit? Is submission such a bad thing in some respects? Isn't it? This is a deep conversation, brothers, now about submission and what does that actually mean?
That
So,
always gets people on social media. Oh my God. I don't even get in those conversations. I'm just like, whatever. Oh my God. The
yeah,
whole submission. Yeah.
yeah. But even not in submission in terms of a woman submitting to them, but literally, how does a man just chill out, submit? But again, coupled with that is a conversation about what is disrespect for them. That's a big conversation. These are all systemic. They all join with each other. What does disrespect mean to you? All right. And when we weigh that up and kind of think about it and analyze it, draw it out, some of them get to an understanding about what they really think is disrespect is immaterial. It doesn't mean anything. So it no longer places some sort of value for them, no longer places some sort of like some sort of, you know, structure for them or some sort of parameter for them to say I'm being disrespected. They let it go because it don't mean anything. And that usually conversation kind of helps the reflective process. But I say this again, you know, my teachings in terms of, you know, my spiritual kind of work. If I was doing it this way, I kind of think about it. Sometimes I do readings for my clients, you know, as an
Let's talk
African
about
practice.
that.
Absolutely. Why
So
not?
when you
If you're
say you do readings for your clients, dig into that a little bit. Explain what you mean for people who may not understand.
so if I'm talking to a client and I can see that a client is open to, you know, our magic, you know, in a way that's kind of like they, you know, they are resonating with it in some kind of thing. Then I'll be like, you know who you are, and God is within you because my teachings doesn't place God outside of ourselves. Would you like to talk to the God in you as to what your next move is, or what is your thinking about this situation? And most of them are curious. They're like, yeah, that sounds like
Right. You
something I
like,
want
oh
to
yeah,
do.
oh the God in me.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's talk about it. Yeah.
sure. And the feelings about my readings or the oracle traditions that I'm in, they always talk about how you as a person can elevate yourself to your more divine self, not your lower self. So it's never going to engage low vibrational behavior. It's always going to send you a message about what you need to do to cultivate yourself to be a better person. If they're already in my clinical space, they're already in the process of learning how to do something different. Because clearly, how they've been doing something before is not working for them. So sometimes when they get these readings, they're like, yo, and it's mind blowing for them because sometimes it opens up and tells them what they thought was going on and believe and actually is manifested in some sort of, you know, wise, you know, sort of space and reading for them in a way that kind of comes open them. So and they really gravitate to it. But you know, and I sometimes do readings just in terms of how I'm working with somebody, not for their benefit. It's for me to be bring out the best in me in terms of what I'm doing for them. You don't do a reading on a person. I'm talking about my energy in terms of what do I need to cultivate in terms of working best with this person. And that has been powerful in orientating me of what I need to focus on in terms of doing this work with this person here. So within that, and that's my African-centered practice. All right. And that's what orientates me in terms of, looking at these, how to do. So when the people come couples relationships, because we're talking about interpersonal relationships here, um, some of them I remember one couple was like, do you want to do a reading about, what energy is sort of manifesting between? Man, when I did this reading, they were like, yes, you see, I knew it. I knew it. Because, our traditions don't lie. And I have two oracular system traditions that I use, tools that I use that complement each other. So I use a Chinese one called I Ching, and I use the Meduna Tear from the Sarasate Society. All right, because
I've heard of
a
the
member.
Yaching.
Yeah. All right, and they both say the same thing. This is how you know it's magic, like literally, because if they were, this something that was kind of conjured up from our own selves, they would both be saying widely different things in a way that but it never happens like that. Never in all the
Right.
20 something years I've been doing this. So when somebody's at that level of understanding, now you're working towards actualizing what the reading's heading to do. This is the tools, this is the rituals, these are the methods that you need to be doing to heal yourself to be better in this relationship. And when they take to it or try to implement it in their life, things start to move differently because they try, they're open to it. And it works. Absolutely works. But I don't do that with all my clients, obviously. I mean, but I'm very clear about, who that might be useful for and who not. So when I'm talking about these young people, even if you're not speaking in terms of an African traditional religions per se, in interpersonal relationships among these young, we gotta really analyze what chaos looks like. And this is what's unfolding for these young people. These ideas of these wanton expressions of sexual energy with with no care for the consequences of what you're doing in terms of hookup culture or all these kind of things, and young women sort of taking on these ideas that they can do what men do. It always surprised me, even this notion of what feminism is in terms of autonomy of body and all these kind of things. And maybe I'm wrong here, somebody can correct me, but why women wanting to pick up the worst habits of what men do as some sort of barometer for
Yeah.
being equal to men, right?
Yeah.
Right. So even when in my career and working in organizations, when women managers were moving up, whatever, they would do some of the same toxic behavior that the men managers would do because that's how they taught to lead people. So they weren't leading from these notions of what Michael saw, kindness, compassion, and blah blah blah. It was, bullying and those kind of behaviors that men managers do, and ruling with an iron fist and some sort of fear, sort of thing. And they were successful. I was like, why does this? Why was this the path or the avenue that you felt that you needed to as a woman in terms of to be successful? Because
Because
it's a
that's what's
patriarchal value.
rewarded.
Right, is what I mean. So now we're in this kind of notion of what these young people believe in terms of no fundamental structure, no fundamental, rules and sort of rites of passage about how we behave with each other, and this kind of wanton sort of expression of engaging with each other with no attachments, but they're getting hurt. They're getting hurt. They're getting frustrated, and there's a lot of different meanings. And one of the key things in our culture, this Western thing, men are not taught to appreciate women as human beings, right? And what I mean by that is just that they're taught to see women as objects sometimes, like literally objects to acquire and discard in a way that says, how do I even join you as a human being? I mean, not everybody, I think, but who are you? Do I even like you? Can I be friends with you? You hear that whole kind of narrative about men and women can't be friends. Who said that? Because that is a culture that is just being derived or being motivated by primitive desires. But actually, I got tons of women friends who I have no interest in sleeping with, but I enjoy their company. I enjoy engaging with them. I believe that they're just as intelligent or smarter than me, some of them. And I can appreciate them as a human being, not as some object. I'm waiting in the wings to sleep with them. No
That makes
intention,
sense now. Now that you finished explaining it, I could see that.
right? But
Yeah.
we have a whole generation of young people that are looking at each other as to be acquired. And this is your attraction is this, and you have orifice that I want to just, sate my primitive desires with. But I'm not
Mhm.
interested in knowing you as a person. No, it's a means to the end. All this small talk that I'm doing with you and, trying to be nice with you, whatever, is a means to an end because I want to sleep with you. And men are not socialized to see women as somebody to actually engage with, be friends with, and blah, blah, blah. And I think women, for their credit, they're socialized to actually see men as somebody to want to engage with because of the socialization process. And then they get very confused when these men play like they want to be friends because they have a goal in mind. It's deceitful. And then when
Damn.
that,
You just
yeah,
described several situations I can think back on.
yeah, and then
Stop.
when they get what they want, they're like, I don't like. They ghost. They do what you said. They do some of these behaviors. They ghosting. But what's fascinating with me is that women are stepping up to now do the same thing.
But that's not
So
good though, because like you said, it's transactional. It's not, and I mean, we talking about spirituality and energies. That's I don't see how men doing it is certainly not good, but women doing the same thing. I don't see that as a good thing.
but then the young women, am I speaking to them or having conversations? They see it as an advancement. They see this as progression. That literally that I can engage with this dude with no attachments whatsoever, and this is something to be proud of. Like I can just do this with you and discard you. And it's like you're gonna have trouble later on forming, long-term relationships or forming meaningful relationships because you can't even do the basics. So you're going to have this attachment style which is prevalent amongst this youth of just absolutely avoidant discarding culture whereas they don't mean anything to anybody. All right, and this is what we're moving towards, and this is what I'm very concerned about. The value system that these young people are using to engage with each other is corrupt, it's diversive, and
Share
it's
some
not
advice
healthy.
to parents of when you say young people. I'm thinking teenagers. I certainly have a teenager and a younger child as well. What's some advice that you would give to parents to help push
How do
back
you
on,
raise
like you
healthy
said,
young
this?
people? Absolutely. So how you raise healthy young people? So I would say when you how you help raise healthy young people is to go back on value systems that are concrete, value systems that are healthy. And literally about how does one human being treat another human being in a healthy way. All right. So if you are in this culture that says me, right? If you're raising a child who's self-centered, selfish, these kind of things, you're cultivating that by some of the things you do in your house, right? So literally, let me give you something about socialization. What people don't understand, right? Young women, girls, are socialized to nurture and take care of other people. You know how this works? So they get them to go and get these little dollies, and they get a tree house or a playhouse sort of thing. And all of these play interacting stuff is about looking after somebody else. Let me tell you, if you have a son and you next have a little baby brother or sister, whatever, put that baby in the boy's hands. Let the boy know how to look after somebody else, nurture somebody else. Because you know what? That young man's gonna grow up to understand that changing nappies is just a task. It's not a woman's job. It's the same task in terms of putting the plates away in the cupboard. But everyone, you got men I'm talking to now talking about they don't change no marriage. That's a woman's job. What are you talking about? Your child, you gonna allow your child to walk around the house all day in shitty nappies, wait for your wife to get home simply because they feel like it's not something that you do? So if you raise your child to have consideration or compassion or feel about he looks after other people, that's a healthy component. That's not you raising a selfish child. One thing you got to teach your children is discernment, make better judgments. All right.
Discernment, yes.
Right. So when you're teaching a child, like, listen, we got to go back to some old school ways. I mean, I've got gray beard and everything, but people need to get to know each other nowadays. This hookup culture is disastrous. Because you hook up with somebody and having, and then one time you're not using no protection, the person is pregnant. You know nothing about this person. I got people I'm seeing right now. She's talking about he's the worst person on earth, but he was sexy at the time. You enjoyed the moment that you had with him, and now you're pregnant, and you joined with this person for the next 18 years at least, but you know nothing about him. How do you get to know somebody, form a relationship with somebody, see how they are with other people, see how they are in their own family, see how they treat other people, to know that this is how they're going to treat you? People make poor judgments based on their likes and dislikes. Because I like this person. And somehow you think you like this person, they're going to be a different person from you. This is the man you're engaging with who has not shown you any indication that he takes care of his child, that he rarely talks about. Somehow you think he's going to be a different person with you when you're pregnant and now ready to have your child. He's going to look after your child. No, he's proven to you. You don't give a care. But people have poor judgment because they're caught up in the emotion, the feelings of it. Some of these things need to be brought back to rationality.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I have seen people, and this is another issue for me, where people are justifying uh, things that are poor character. People will use the longest academic jargon, academic language to justify behavior. Like one of the example you gave, is one of them, right? Or you'll have sometimes, men who have, you mentioned patterns earlier, and I know that sometimes that can be rooted in trauma, but I know like sometimes there's patterns of some men, I would say some married men,
Mm-hmm,
who have a pattern of being serial cheaters
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and gaslighting, and making excuses for themselves by saying things like, well, I can't help but polymer. What is it? What is it? Polyamory is or
yeah,
something like that. Like that's
yeah,
the new wave. Have you been seeing that? We didn't even get. That's the new wave. Everybody talking about that now. I mean, I don't. I guess whatever. I don't necessarily. I don't have really a position on that. I noticed that men usually like to have more than one woman, but as soon as we start talking about, well, if that's how it's gonna go, then what
yeah.
about me? Can I have two men? You feel me?
Absolutely. I see this all the time. Let me see something. Just back to that one point I want to say to you about raising children. Don't raise mean children. It's really interesting. Don't raise dick children. People that are sarky, that pick on others. That is a recipe for how they're going to treat other people when they get older. That's a bully. That's somebody that's going to be belittling somebody because they're not wearing the latest things or whatever. That's somebody that's going to demean somebody else because they don't fit their profile of who they are. That's not a nice person. You got to
A
check about
bully.
right, like somebody that's mean people. And that's what you're engaging sometimes. Unhappy, miserable people, mean people. and, and people don't have enough discernment to kind of be like, you're not a nice person. This is how you are with people. Like, am I supposed to be connected with you? Like, you're gonna be different with me? No. When something's not going right for you, this is how you're gonna treat me. And you're not picking up that this is not who you need to be with. Like literally, right? So when somebody asked me, do I believe? I think somebody's asking, do I believe in the concept of toxic masculinity? Absolutely. When I say masculinity in itself is not toxic, all right? But this is being placed in front of masculinity a lot. But toxic behavior is pervasive for both genders. It's not just masculinity. But unfortunately, the way that we see it most in sort of like in in action or in practice, the effects of it is much larger sometimes because we're measuring it in terms of violence. You get what I'm saying to you, right? So, but this notion of toxic behaviors is absolutely applicable for both genders. It's not just masculinity in terms of so a lot of toxic women out there. All right, and toxic femininity is such a thing, but as toxic
Toxic
masculinity
femininity.
is
Right.
absolutely a thing. Absolutely, it's no question. All right, and toxic masculinity is a thing as well. So yes, I do believe in somebody was asking that question, but when you were saying, and I need to say this is kind of like just raise kind, loving children. I know I sound like a hippie, but it's because of my experiences of what I kind of grow and I know what dysfunctional behavior is. I know what people who have, um, you know, not grown up in nice environments, what they do to other people. So I'm very clear that if this child is raised in a loving environment, they will be manifest differently. And that's my child that needs to marry your child. So, I'm going back to other ideas. I'm just having a joke with some of my people today, but we're going to be moving into arranged marriages in generations come because we're going to be clear about your son. I know the family, he's going to be raised a certain way. He might be ideal for my daughter. Let's try to do an introduction because that's where we're going. Because literally, the whole thing about even taking your child and taking them to school is that your child now has to interact with all these other children who have grown up in dysfunctional homes. And you
Woo!
can't you can't even protect them from that. Like they're
Yes,
they're
it's
not
a
parenting,
cycle.
they're not parenting your
Yeah,
child the way you're parenting your child. Like
yeah,
literally, they're teaching them habits and behaviors which are toxic or
right,
dysfunctional, right?
right.
And you have to navigate that minefield.
Hmm.
That's why that child is sitting down 3, 4 years old in the lunchroom or whatever, and this other kid comes and punch him in the nose for no reason because that's what he's been taught in his own house. Anyway.
Damn. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, yeah, it's a lot. It is a
Yeah.
lot. There's another comment about accountability is lacking. Yeah,
Yeah, nobody
yeah.
wants to take responsibility for what they do. Like I fucked up. It's real simple to say that. Like, and then this notion of going back to apologize or be conciliatory to the other person renders you weak, so you're not gonna do that. That's toxic behavior. That's if you can't
It's
turn around and say,
also toxic, yeah, but it's also toxic for, and I'm going back to this, the intellectualizing of it. So like sometimes people can know all the right language, can know I will say I can feel when an apology is real, when it's
right,
authentic. Because
right,
you can
absolutely.
apologize all day. The best apology is change behavior, honey. Just
Absolutely. I
because
love
you
that
say, "Oh,
quote.
I apologize," that don't
I
mean
love that
shit.
quote. I love that quote. I love that quote. Listen. I mean, I'm not gonna sit up here. I'm pretty sure there's millions of beautiful young people out there who are progressing and developing into wonderful human beings. Absolutely. But if you want a barometer of the thought processes of a lot of people in our society today, what's that young sister name? What's her name? Karen. So
Catrice.
Richardson, no, Richardson, the runner that caught smoking marijuana or something like
Oh,
that. Yeah,
Shakari
yeah,
Richardson.
Shikari.
Yeah,
Now,
sister out of
Shikari
Houston.
came on, made a comment. I messed up and I've been banned. But if you want to hear the thought process that were going, all of these people were like, no, let's excuse their behavior, basically. It doesn't matter if this person over here didn't get banned or whatever, or they're doing some other kind of literally. Where's the accountability? This sister was accountable for herself. But you got
She
this
was.
chorus of voices
She
telling
was.
her not to be accountable for her actions. What are we teaching people? If I messed up, it doesn't matter what. It's like I go in the bank and rub it. And last week, some dude went in there and rubbed it, and he got away with it. and everybody knows you got away with it. But it's like, oh, why are you punishing me because you didn't? What does that got to do with it? I robbed the bank. I deserve my sentence. So I'm not supposed to get a sentence because he didn't get caught. What is this? And this is really a good metaphor or good visual kind of, illustration of a lot of people's thinking. Accountability is you standing up and owning your mistakes. And if it's that in a relationship context, and that's it. And this is the thing with the young people. Some of them don't want to take no accountability for what they did. What is my contribution to this current situation in terms of what I'm in? And they literally are moving borderline narcissistic sociopathic behavior in a way. If I want, yeah, like literally, that this, I can do what the hell I want. We got a bit of a culture nowadays where I'll do what the hell I want when I want, and nobody ain't gonna tell me why. And that's not how the world goes. The world has order in itself. If you look at nature, it has order in itself. Why do humans think they can push the boundaries of order and structure to suit their own needs just because? And that's why we're living. These young people have been growing up in a sort of age of chaos. That's what I call it. It's chaotic behavior. And it's absolutely orchestrated. Let's be clear about that as well. All right? In the way that our people are being raised in this confusion suits everybody in terms of, social engineering processes to keep everybody stupefied.
Ooh, that's a whole nother lie by itself. Oh my God, the social engineering. Woo. Tell people the definition of that.
So social engineering is simply like, best example I always talk about, and I love hip hop, but hip hop is part of our culture. And social engineering in terms of hip hop is like, what hip hop, how it's presented and displayed and promoted in a way is, there's no other music genre that does that. None whatsoever. Ask anybody, talk about which other genre has a succession of dead people in terms of, so it promotes toxic, violent behavior. And I love hip hop. You think that's accidental?
It didn't start off that way. We need to be
Absolutely,
fair.
we know this.
Yeah, it was, hip hop was very
but
political.
once they see what the programming is and how it can and how it works, that's social engineering.
Right. I got you.
You understand?
I got you.
Right?
I got
that once they saw how it
I'm gonna
works,
have to bring you back to actually talk about that. We should do a deep dive about that, because to be honest with you, there's not agreement in the community about that. It's the same people, a lot of liberal academics, like you said, who want to evade accountability, who want to make excuses for all types of crazy behavior that we knew our grandmothers wouldn't put up with. We knew we would get a whooping for when we were little, right? And I'm not advocating whooping kids. But I'm just saying, I need to talk about my upbringing. My upbringing was very much value-based. And it was not about not taking accountability. Everything was about being responsible, working hard, all of those things. And now granted, some of it is striver mentality. I hear people say that, but it is what it is. Black people have tried to figure out in this country. My folks are, descendants of Africans who were enslaved here. So we have done the best that we can, right, to figure out how to survive and thrive in hell, basically. And so I sometimes get rubbed the wrong way by some of these new academics with all this new language around respectability politics, right? Everything ain't effing respectability politics, man. Some shit is life and death.
Absolutely.
You understand?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But they use respectability politics to shut you down from critique.
Exactly.
So you cannot critique this because now you're coming off with respectability politics. But let me be clear about something. If you know the science of music, right, you'll know that music carries frequencies. Now I don't want to get too deep here.
Oh no, please. I'm gonna have to bring you back because I'm gonna have to get off in a minute. My children, I got to get them together. But dig into that real quick because I can't get off. You can't drop that and not explain that.
So if you understand frequencies, right, it's programming.
Yes,
It speaks to
programming.
different levels of your consciousness. That's what people don't understand. Okay, so when I was younger and I wanted to roll out to do something nefarious, I wasn't listening to R&B. That's a different frequency. I'd be listening to some Mob Deep or some other kind of toxic shit that was programming me, giving me the energy to go out to do what I wanted to do. And people don't understand that if you're listening to this hours and hours each day, it's literally programming your subconscious. So that's what people do. Some people, yeah, and all humans are different, but majority, some humans it's not reaching them in that way. But from the majority that we're talking about, if you're listening to bear kill a nigga, 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 when you're in a
And the
situation,
repetition,
yeah, yeah, when you're in
yeah,
a situation where everything you've been listening to is now playing out in real life, you think you're not automatically gonna be now, I want to love my brother or hug him? Hell no. What's been playing into your subconscious is now being playing out in real life because you've been visualizing that. You've been visualizing. Oh man, let me stop. See, this is what I say. People that try to say, "Oh, I watch these movies and it didn't happen to you." You're an individual.
it's yeah. People be like, "Oh, it's just entertainment."
No,
No,
it's not. It's never. It's never just entertainment.
it's
And
never just entertainment.
listen to me. Let me just finish with this, right? Let me tell
Yes,
you how
yes,
this is
do
a
it.
science. Listen to me. When I read a long time ago, this Naomi Klein book, I think, a white woman, they're talking about the advertising industry. When I read in her book, the amount of money that is spent each year on advertising,
Mm-hmm.
okay, in terms of products and stuff like that, they have psychologists that do the science of colors. So when you walk into the supermarket, if a particular color catches your eye, you may walk down the aisle, but you're coming right back to the product because of the color of it. This is how subtle it works. All right. So when she said in that book that they spend billions every year on advertising, why are they spending all that money on something that they know that's not going to be effective?
It
You
is
think you went
effective.
right? You
That's
think
the
you went
point.
and picked
Yeah.
up that right? It's the same principle with music. It's a science. They have top psychologists that work in these companies in their marketing divisions to sell us products based on them understanding what is operating under in our subconscious. And music is delivered to us in the same way. And this is why we are stuck in a chaotic way. Because if you understand about Black Bodies, and I'm talking about Frank Wilderson's work here, right? In terms of, Afro pessimism.
Afro pessimism. Yeah.
Yeah. Our Black bodies has always been disposable.
Man.
We always to them. We're batteries. We're literally that whole visual metaphor and matrix in terms of being batteries being used of discarded for them. So whatever they can get out of us is what they're milking. But we have no use. It's no use to them. You're not valuable to white pathology. We exist for their pathology.
And consumption.
Right. So this is why hip hop is positioned in the way it is, or rap music. That's exactly why it's positioned. Because I'm telling you, there's no other
Mumble
genre.
rap.
Right. There's no other genre on mainstream radio who gets promoted in the same way as the way rap does. And let me be clear, I love hip hop. It's one of my first love.
I do
I love
too. But this reminds me of the conversation in the early 90s, and people sided with, Two Live Crew and Tupac and all of them. But do you remember Sister Dolores Tucker,
it.
who was fighting? I don't, maybe you weren't in the States then, but anyway, here, I forget you are Jamaican from London. But anyway, see Dolores Tucker. The listeners who
Yeah,
are
yeah, I remember.
listening, they
I
know
remember.
who she is.
Yeah, I remember.
In the early 90s, she went
I
before
remember.
Congress to push back on all of this shit. She was
Yeah.
like, wait a minute. That's what I mean by, like, people will call her respectability politics today. You see what I'm
She
saying? But
she's
now we
visionary.
have
She saw what was coming.
decades. She saw what was coming.
Absolutely. You got young ladies walking around now, and again, if you know, autonomy, calling what yourself. But this notion, I'm not gonna call my little daughter a bitch or a boss bitch. Language is programming. There's no way my little daughter is gonna see herself as an empress or a queen if I'm calling her a boss bitch every day. But then you want to talk about, oh, you can call yourself what you want, but it is dominant vernacular. And they've taken on this mantra of negative slurs and slang and think they can reframe it and reculture it into something else. It's never going to happen because the psyche of the word is already imprinted. And this is what you got nowadays. So you got these brothers on the video. There's some things I can't even listen to no more.
Oh,
And those
yeah.
are
Some
tracks
of
I
it I
used to
can't even listen
love.
to.
I used to love
Yeah.
them tracks, but as soon as I keep hearing this nigga, and I want a bitch like that, I switch it off.
You
Because I know
can't.
it's
Yeah.
poisonous.
Poison. They
My
always put it to a slick beat. I ain't gonna lie. Sometimes you be bopping to it, you're like, wait a minute. You be
but some of these
bopping to
beats
it.
these youngsters coming out,
They
yeah, you
put a
know,
slick beat on it.
yeah, some of these beats are burning, but that speaks to us. You know, the drum's always going to
Exactly.
speak to us,
Right.
regardless. So the drum's always going to speak to us. The music going to always speak to it, and that's control. That's the
It is.
seduction of it. And before you know it,
Yeah,
because the
this
beat's
brother
going to
put the
hit us,
comment here.
right,
Brother Paris said that they did the study back in the 70s so they could manipulate these people. We are the most studied. These people have been studying us for centuries now.
right. So
Yeah.
you know, and when I say this, it's that these people that talk about, you know, in our community, you can absolutely control what comes into your child's psyche. You know, the
You
notion of
can.
what they're
People
listening
thought
to.
we were weird. When my husband and I got rid of TV, it's been 8 years now.
Mhm.
People thought we were weird. I got to tell you the story real quick, and then we will wrap. I want to bring you
I'd
back though
love
because
talking
I
to
do
you,
want
man.
to get
Bless it.
into. Yeah, I
No
want to get
problem.
more into that piece around music, and maybe
Yeah,
that could actually be a panel discussion. I might
yeah,
invite a couple other people.
absolutely. Because I feel there's people
Um,
more qualified than me that might be able to give you a
No,
bit
no,
more
no, no.
insight.
I mean, just I
Bless you.
like having these kind of healthy discussions. To
Yeah,
me, like this kind of content that I'm putting out on this YouTube page, I feel like we have, if we're going to critique all these other YouTubers that we're talking about, we need to be creating the content that we think people should hear and
sure.
our people should
Absolutely.
have. You see what I'm
Absolutely.
saying?
Absolutely.
Um, but I remember I read Manufacturing Consent. Noam Chomsky. You familiar with that book?
Yeah. I know the title. I don't know. Yeah, the author. Go ahead.
Yeah, I read that years ago. When I was really, I became a voracious reader after my first year of college, and I just started
Right.
consuming all kinds of African center, all the
Nothing wrong with
John
that.
Henry Clark's, Amos Wilson, like.
Yeah.
But
Nothing
then
wrong with that.
Amos Wilson always would encourage us to read
Oh,
white authors as well. You know what I mean?
that's my
He said
ancestor
you
right
better,
there.
yeah, you
That's
got to
my
study
ancestor.
them.
Yeah.
So Noam Chomsky was one of the first people that I started to read. And when I read Manufacturing Consent, and it's related to what you were talking about, the money that they spend on advertising and all of that. This probably gonna be controversial, and they might strike, YouTube might strike my video, but we're in a big simulation right now around
Right.
manufacturing consent. I'm not gonna even name what it is, but to me, I see it so clearly. I
Right.
see it
Right.
clearly.
Absolutely.
But so many people are being like led like sheep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because one of the things that he said in that book, I'll never forget, he said, there are people who decide and actually make up what is news,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
in back rooms and things like, man,
Absolutely.
he said, and it's not just news. He
Right.
said it's TV shows, it's movies.
Right.
I was
Right.
just like, oh, I'm getting rid of cable. I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not.
I'm
Yeah.
like, but I mean, obviously, we don't like we not living like monks or anything like that. We do have some streaming services. I'll be
Right,
honest about that.
right, right,
The world has changed, but when we first got rid of TV, it was nothing. We
right,
what we did was read. My husband and I are both readers,
right.
and it allowed for more intimacy and more conversation because we weren't
Hmm.
always stuck to a TV.
Hmm. 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 Yeah, it's an interesting time. And I think even what we started out talking at the beginning of the conversation, I was shocked at how quickly um, these people gain traction. And it's a once it's viral, it's an internet sort of viral thing, and
Mhm.
how much people are now sort of embracing. And I was like, I'm very conscious of my responsibility. I have to maintain a degree of neutrality when I'm in the clinical space and based on what I'm hearing, right? Which is why I'm very clear about a lot of things that is not of my culture per se, or not of my, my sphere in terms of my practices or something that I, promote or cultivate or whatever. But I understand that, who you're working with, it may work for them. So polyamory is an example of that, okay? But when these young
What's
brothers
an
are talking,
example?
polyamory, right? That might be an example of that. It's not my thing. You understand? I mean, in a sense, was when I say not my thing, but I'm not saying there's something negative about it. But for some people, where they're at right now, it might be perfect for them. All right. Because they, whatever reason, they don't have the concept, the bandwidth to do a monogamous relationship. So this is something that will fit their space and where they're at this point in time. So I'm conscious of understanding a whole bunch of different ideas about how people relate for the purposes of my work. However, the point I was trying to make, I'm very conscious in terms of responsibility as well. As I'm moving into eldership, I'm moving into, priesthood in terms of, what my role is. When I speak into these young brothers who are getting fixated on particular ideas from these clowns, and now that's what I call them. Kevin Samuels and some of these commentators are clown. All right, they are whipping up the crowd in a frenzy and got people thinking all kind of crazy ideas. This notion of a high value man. You know how unattainable that is for the average black man out there in relation to being this high and people buying into this idea. What the hell is high value? High value is not based on your material worth. Most of the world is poor, or most of the world is just trying to make ends meet. And you're saying it's that whole thing about everybody in America believes they're going to be a millionaire one day. That's why they don't uprise. I can't say the quote properly. You get what I'm saying to you, but it's that notion.
Yeah,
This is
that
what
was
he's buying into, right?
yeah, I know that quote. Yeah,
Yeah. But these young brothers are in my space. I have to be careful about how I'm talking because I know that I'm a critical point to change their thinking, to not basically move into areas of. I think some of these brothers are incels. They got this vicious misogyny against women that is like literally how they think of women and how they perceive them. And I'm conscious in my clinical space that I might be the last bastion to put some of my ideas or thoughts or reflections in their head to steer them away for some dangerous destructive thinking. And it dawned on me that this is my responsibility, that this is what I gotta be doing in when I'm talking to these brothers. Because if you are talking about, Kevin Samuels winning some sort of kind of like motivation speaking for you or somebody that you look up to, that's a problem for me. That's
yeah,
a problem because the guy is not healthy or useful in any form, really. You know what I'm saying to you in terms of what he's doing. You know what I mean? So it's like, so, and I'm conscious of that in terms of how I need to be doing this work, of making sure that I'm, basically putting up a war against this stampede of
yeah,
dysfunctional thinking. So yeah,
yeah.
that's what I want to leave. Just my last point that is that it's the work, it's the community work,
It's the work.
because this young man is going to engage in somebody else's young daughter, and I want to be sure that he's engaging with her with healthy ideas about himself and how he sees other with people.
Yes,
Right?
yeah. That's good.
Yeah,
That's good. No, that's good. Now
appreciate
next
you.
week, no, this was good, and I appreciate you for coming, especially on such short notice. And I'm glad there's just an hour of time difference down in Jamaica and everything, and
Absolutely.
hopefully, like I said, I think I told you I'll be coming to Montego Bay in a
Yeah,
couple
yes,
weeks.
absolutely, sister.
My friend and I,
Let me know.
just have some girl time. But yeah, I'll hit you
I'm
up
sure you will, Jamaica. We will.
if they don't shut down the travel. Who knows what they ramping up in the media around this variant. So we'll see what happens. But I appreciate you. This was good. I am going to continue to have these kind of conversations. In fact, next week, Sister Niara, she's also an African in the diaspora. She was living in Israel, just relocated to Ghana. But she's going to be joining me next week to also talk more specifically about Black love and Black male female relationships. I remember that was all the wave in the early 90s. So and back then, I don't think it was
I
as
can't wait.
toxic as it is now. You know what I mean? So just
Yeah,
want to invite everybody that's here to make sure y'all come back Wednesday nights,
sure.
8 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate
Thank
you. This
you.
was great.
Blessings. Blessings. Thank
Absolutely.
you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.